The single most broken piece of the entire process is doing discovery. I cannot tell you how many times I have listened to call recordings that are identified as a discovery call, and the actual amount of discovery is often on the order of 7 or 8 minutes. Whoa. Visualize this. 30-minute call starts off. The first 3 minutes are establishing rapport, which means that a salesperson is scanning the Zoom background and says, "Oh, looks like you like black and white photography." Okay, blah, blah, blah. The next few minutes are often where actual discovery takes place, where the prospect confirms that they have the pain that the vendor would like to hear. And then there's a little bit of discussion, most typically, of the environment and tech stack. And after that, what typically happens in these faux discovery calls? Any suggestion, any idea? What happens next?
They want to sell.
The Intelligence Forge podcast is sponsored by Permasize AI Forge. The Intelligence Forge podcast is sponsored by Permasize AI Forge. At Permasize AI Forge, we know you're ambitious. But are manual tasks like admin, lead generation, nurturing, and onboarding holding you back from truly scaling your business? Imagine saving dozens of hours every week, freeing you to deepen client relationships and execute high-impact strategy. Our clients aren't just imagining it. They're saving countless hours per week and doubling their revenue within months. We custom-build AI automation systems that eliminate the grind. From effortless lead generation and nurturing to seamless onboarding, we give you back the most valuable resource, your time, so you can focus on building those vital human connections and driving strategic growth. Stop letting repetitive tasks limit your potential. It's time to build a business that works for you, not the other way around. Ready to unlock your true scaling power? Visit PermasizeAIForge.com and book your free AI audit call today to discover how you can save time and double your revenue. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the Intelligence Forge YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new episode.
Transforming your sales motion, discovery, demos, and buyer enablement. Welcome to the Intelligence Forge. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to have Peter Cohan with us, the founder of Second Derivative and the brilliant mind behind the great demo and doing discovery methodology. Peter, thanks so much for joining us today.
Truly my pleasure, sir.
All right. I'd love you to, introduce yourself to our audience because they want to know and hear your story in your own word. Can you just explain what Second Derivative is all about, what you do for software organizations around the world, and any other way for our audience to get to meet you?
Perfect. So let me answer that question with a question. And it's very simple. Have you ever seen a bad software demonstration?
Yes.
Yes, you have. Okay, good. So we've already established that the problem exists. So let me give you a little bit of history and the founding of this company. And there's a couple of ideas in this that might be interesting to the audience. So we're going to go back in time, going way back in time. It is just around the turn of the century, 26 years ago. I am leading a team of, at that point, about 80 people at a Silicon Valley early stage organization. And I realized we need a CRM system. We need to buy a CRM system because we've got people all around the world trying to coordinate on sales efforts, and with this way too much slippage and way too much friction. And so I became the customer. I became the buyer. First major time in my life. And the process of inviting 5 different CRM vendors to share their wares with us was really, really intriguing. Number one, only one organization actually did any discovery. 4 others, the 4 other major players we talked with, they just said, "We want to show you a demo." We went, okay. But here's where the pain began and the scales fell from my eyes. So they organized 2-hour demos, each of these organizations. They wanted us to have everybody that was, the buying committee, if you will, in the room. So I had 8 people from my team.
All right.
10 hours of demos total. And at the end of those demos, any CFO would say that's a lot of investment. And it was. And I gathered after these 10 hours of demos, I gathered the team together and I said, "What did you guys think?" And what do you think they said?
Probably they are ready.
No, they said those demos were awful. They were terrible. They were linear end-to-end demos. They started off saying, let us show you how to configure the system. Now we're in CRM systems. Now we're going to show you how to enter a new record. We're going to clone that record. We're going to run a marketing campaign, blah, 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 blah.
All right.
At the end of these demos, when I got everybody together, they said they were awful. They were terrible. They didn't understand our needs at all. And they never got to show us stuff that we were actually interested in. So for example, I was the CRO, basically the head of sales. And what I needed out of the system were basically three sets of information. The current forecast, the pipeline going forward, and the ability to inspect some of the major opportunities or deals to see where can I coach, where can I help, what's the status, etc. Never saw those reports. They never had time to get to them because they spent the whole time going through these long linear workflows. So everybody bitched and moaned. And then I said, hey guys, I've got bad news. So they said, what is it? I said, we've been doing the same thing to our customers and prospects. We've been inflicting long linear, let me show you how everything works. Let me cram as much as I can into the allotted time. I said, we got to do something totally different. We've got to flip our demos upside down. We've got to do discovery to understand what it is that key people in particular want out of our offering and show them those deliverables right up front, right away at the very beginning of the demo. And we began to do it. And that was the founding of the methodology. And we tested it out, we hardened it, we production tested it. Then the founding moment occurred, and that was about 3 years later. I was just tired. I had 120 reports. There's an enormous amount of whining and complaining going on. That was just me. And I didn't want it anymore. I spent most of my time with human resources instead of actually doing the, working with the technology and customers and things I love. So I bailed and founded this organization, Second Derivative, which started off basically saying to people, have you ever seen a bad software demo? And if the answer was yes, or something like, well, I've probably done hundreds of them myself, I knew I had a prospects and began to train people, delivering the methodology going forward. And it has now been 23 years of this business. So let me just pause there and ask any comments or observations on this, because it was the revelation of actually being in the customer's shoes that made me realize we got to do things entirely differently.
Wow. I think that's a very big way, or let me say interesting way, to know that what you are doing, it's actually not working. Rather than somebody telling you, you discover it yourself. And I think it's going to be very easy for you to pivot because it's not somebody criticizing you. When somebody criticizes you about what you're doing, you like, this guy doesn't like me. This guy is jealous. That's why he's saying it. You don't immediately see the value of what they are saying. But when you actually the one who picked it up yourself one time, it's very, very easy for you. And I would say maybe that's the reason why it was easy for you to make the change quickly. But anyway, thank you so much for sharing that.
So that was the founding element. And then getting traction was a very interesting thing. So I went from having, an entire organization, salespeople, pre-sales people, people in operations, people in marketing, to doing it all myself. And as you know, when you are self-employed, you have a fool for a boss.
Sure. That's true.
That's very true. And you're also your sales, your marketing, your IT, your accounting, your every single department. However, at least if you make a mistake, it's your mistake. And you do that.
That's true. That's true. All right. That's fascinating. I love to hear success story at the beginning. And that's why I'm going to ask you the next question to say, what is happening right now, in your company that you want to share with us? Maybe some wins, some success stories, some clients, success, anything that you think looks like a win or success that has happened in the past or recently that you want to share with us?
Sure. So let's fast forward now to 2015 and 2016. I was still sole operator, doing all my selling and all my deliveries. The deliverables were typically 1.5 day, 1 3/4 day workshops, often face to face with a team of 12 or 15 people or so. And I was making an extraordinarily good living doing this, but I was oversubscribed. I was pushing away business. So in the early 2016, let's go sideways for a moment. I did not want to have any employees again. I was tired of having employees. I didn't want to be the responsible for them. I didn't want to have to deal with, all the employment issues and on and on. So I reached out in early 2016 to a handful of people who are either direct competitors of mine or very complementary, adjacent. And I basically said, hey, I'm oversubscribed. Are you interested in becoming a partner to sell and deliver great demo methodology training? And a handful of people responded positively. And this is where I was really sticking my neck out as I said, okay, here's what I'd like to do. I will invite you to join a workshop. So exposing the secret sauce. Invite you to join a workshop, and if you like what you're seeing and you want to move forward, let's get you trained up, if you will. And I did that, and I have not looked back. I have a handful of, and it's literally just a handful. It's an excellent, excellent team of people around the world who sell and deliver great demo methodology in the Americas, across Europe, and in Asia Pacific. And that's a model that might be worth contemplating for others as well. They are their own individual businesses. They're responsible for their own bottom line. They do their own sales, their own marketing, their own delivery. Early on, I did the prospecting and discovery for them and then sort of handed them the customers ready to deliver. Over time, they became skilled and more used to how to go about actually getting customers on their own. Now, I do zero prospecting, zero discovery work. My job today for the extended team, if you will, is to continue to generate content, refine the ideas, evolve the methodology, and write a few additional books.
Wow. All right. That's really a big success story because you identify what you want to do early enough and you went for it straight away and you put the brand the way you wanted the strategy and it worked for you. But my question, which is a follow-up question, this is off script, is currently now, are you still taking people to do the same thing or you are just full to the brim?
So people are, I'm not full to the brim because I'm now on this part of the curve, the descending part of the curve. But the rest of the team, the partner organizations, they're actually doing a little bit of the same thing that I did in 2016. They're now reaching out to additional partners and bringing them up to students. It's a slow but very, very gratifying amplification.
All right. Thank you so much for clarifying that. All right. Let's go back to the beginning. I just wanted to know, because this is going to be very important, as we continue in the discussion. Walk us through how you got started in terms of your structure, your funding, because a lot of business or people will look at other business and say, oh, this business is now 30 million. But in their own mind, they think you started with $1 million US, but it doesn't work that way. So it will be good for you to share how you begin, how much funding was available to you. Did you borrow money? Did you have money saved? And how you are able to, grow the company into where you are today. And if you want to share where you are today compared to where you begin from, I think that's very important for our audience to understand.
Sure. I'll answer this in the form of short stories.
Okay, good.
In around the beginning of 2023, when my wife and I were talking about, I'm really getting tired. The traffic, the commute is just hell. Blah 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 blah. I was whining and bitching and moaning all the time. And she says, "Well, why don't you go ahead and start your own company?" And I said, "Ha ha ha! That's really very funny. What would we? Yeah, what should we? How would we even manage that?" She says, "Well, you know what?" She says, and she was really the perfect salesperson in this. And she says, "Well, we have easily a year of runway, okay, in terms of savings that would be willing to expend in an experiment," was the way she phrased it. And then she says, and I said, "Okay, well," she says, "Well, what's the worst thing that could happen?" She's such a best person, and she's a natural. And I said, "Well, the worst thing that happens is it's not a success. And then I have to go back and get, gainful employment again." And she says, well, how hard would it be to do that? And I said, well, I know there are several organizations that would be delighted to snap me up. So I think it's a pretty safe bet. She says, then is there any reason why you shouldn't get started right away? So we had zero external funding. This was an entirely zero bootstrapped operation. Actually started out by going to companies as I targeted as initial customers, companies that I used to sell against, and said to them, hey, would you like to know why my demos kicked your butt? In a nice way, in a very nice way. And actually that was an adjacent industries or adjacent organizations. And that actually was a very, very successful way in getting started. They knew me, they knew my reputation, they knew that I was quite skilled and had changed the way that demos were being done. They'd seen this, but they didn't really know how to do it themselves. They just knew that they were being there. And so I went to them, started getting some traction. Most importantly, I was able to use them as success stories and initial references when I began to then branch out and go into disciplines and organizations that had never heard of me. So make that comment that in any kind of a business, one of your first objectives should be to secure some good reference stories.
That's true.
That are not just willing to say, I used his services and they work, but people who are actually willing to pick up the phone and talk to a prospect and say, yeah, Cohan's great demo methodology really turned the tables for us. It really worked. They have to be willing to pick up the phone. But that's how we got started. And, I had set myself a goal of a number metric that if we didn't make it, I would go back and get a real job, if you will. Blew it away, and we never. Let me see if I can paint a picture. For a long time, my wife and I were bringing in easily over $500,000 US a year in revenue. Wow. That was in net. So we were doing very, very, very well for quite a period of time. So it's an interesting model to explore. It's an interesting model to pursue.
Okay, we will dive into that later. But I want to know, because you work with a lot of software companies, helping them leverage better sales processes. But what specific AI tools do you currently use, in your own business to stay competitive? And I'm curious about these, saying beyond normal ChatGPT, everybody use that, Claude, Gemini. Is there any other tech stack that you could speak to that you're currently leveraging?
So it's an interesting question. And the answer is I'm not using very much directly. I do a lot of searching on Google and carefully phrased, queries and so forth, which is leveraging the existing AI. But in terms of my personal practices, I'm not doing very much at all. Now, that being said, I see AI very much like the California gold rush of 1849. There will be two sets of winners. There are appearing two sets of winners. Those who are able to strike it rich, find the gold in an AI tool that they're selling or that they're using. However, I think a large portion of the success are going to be those people that are like the Levi's jeans company. In other words, organizations that are selling the tools to support AI. For example, generating a model, large language model whatsoever, and running through a training set or two is only the starting point, as most people should know.
That's true.
And then operationalizing it, testing it on larger data sets, working out the bugs. That's to a certain degree where the gold is. In other words, I believe the organizations that are DevOpsing AI, I think are very, very well positioned for a good future. How does that resonate? What are you seeing?
You're right. What I tell people is you have to start somewhere. Whichever way it is, you have to start somewhere and then you graduate from one level to another. The truth of the matter is that there is AI for everybody at whatever level you want to start with. Even if it is for you to write your email correctly, you will be amazed that you draft an email, you want to reply to an email, just put it back on ChatGPT, just put it back on Claude, put it back on Gemini and say, please refine this for me. And you will be amazed the way it's going to put it in a very much decent, clean way that it will blow your mind. that could be a starting point for anyone. And then you begin to ask yourself, okay, are there any manual things that I'm doing every day that I don't like doing? And I want to just automate it so that something could do it for me. It could even be your email. There's an AI tool that I've seen a lot of people using that will help you sort out your email, the one that is important, put it in one place. So you don't need to go and be looking at all those spam-related email, and then you are opening it, and then you are deleting it. It will help you sort it out, these are important, and then those are the ones you concentrate on. So there's always something. I think where I draw the line for everyone is this. Are you open-minded enough for you to find out what is available for me? What can I use? Then that is where the conversation starts. But when people begin to like AI, I've heard about AI, I don't like it. What exactly do you know about it that makes you conclude that you don't like it? It's going to take people's job. That's why I don't like. No, you're just hearing from somewhere and then you're drawing to conclusion. I mean, how about you just enrolling yourself to an AI course somewhere? A full day, half day, a 1 hour, 2 hour, at least gain knowledge. I mean, everyone learns good.
Here's an intriguing story. So the world can be described as in terms of the technology adoption curve. So we've got innovators, early adopters, early majority, majority, laggards. AI is in the upswing of the early majority. That's where I would say the rough average is. But let me tell you a story. There's a cafe in Woodside, California, just on the outskirts of Silicon Valley, called Buck's Cafe. And Buck's Cafe is the home of the cocktail napkin founding event. In other words, this is a place where many Silicon Valley companies actually were founded. When you go to Buck's, the person at the entrance would not ask, "How many are you?" but he or she would ask, "Who are you meeting with?"
What?
Yeah. And I was there, and actually I'm the board of directors of a software company that we was meeting the CEO there a good 20 years ago. And I happened to glance on my way out. I happened to glance over at the cash register, the point of sale device. And I noted it was still green screen. It was running DOS. It's a guy, the owner, Buck, was actually there. And I said, "Buck, what's with this? This is like the heart of innovation, this building, this place in Silicon Valley." And I said, what's with using DOS? And guess what he said?
What did he say?
He said, "No compelling reason to change."
Wow.
So in the seat of innovation and fast movement, we even still have somebody who's a laggard with respect to a particular technology. I thought that was one of the most amusing things I'd seen in a long time. That's the way it is with AI. You've got people that are totally immersed in it, love it, everything that comes out, they just, it's like, "Yeah, this is great." You've got people in the early majority who are now beginning to get intrigued. They know they need to do something. They're not sure what it means. You've got people in the late majority who are saying, no. This is too new. This is I'll tell you, I was looking for. I'm writing an article on demos and discovery for startups, and I was looking for some example technologies. And one that leapt to my mind were bicycles.
All right.
Bicycles represented the first time that humans could move on their own power for long distances in a way that actually, it turns out that riding a bicycle on the level requires 3 times less energy to move the same distance than walking. Interesting, right? Yeah. So then, of course, if you're going downhill, I mean, it's even better. Yeah. Going up, it's still 3 times, as it turns out. But you went through that same exact technology adoption curve shift. Okay.
Here is the magic one question, which everyone gets to answer on the podcast. And it's your turn. If you have a magic one today and you could instantly improve one thing about your company's operation tomorrow, what will it be and why?
About my company's operation.
Yep.
The magic wand would be, and it's an AI move for sure. The magic wand would be rapidly identifying those prospects with a high probability of need and desire to change.
Right. Because change is something that humans don't really gravitate to naturally.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. Salespeople are the best example. Salespeople's job is to tell other people to change and then to make them pay to change. But ask a salesperson to change him or herself, they can be the most challenging to change. That's actually something I would see in great demo workshops on a very, very frequent basis. I would say that 80% of the people that came were willing to explore change, but a good 20% that represents that far into the technology adoption curve. They would either come in saying, I'm not planning to make any changes to my demos. Okay, fine, whatever. You're deaf. Or they would say, well, I'm willing to listen to what you have to say, but I'm probably still not going to change.
That's interesting.
So that's the curve. That's what we should expect as we're talking about our own technologies, if you will, and AI. But that would be my number one use for AI, to be able to tease out those prospects that have the highest likelihood of having interest and need and being willing to pursue a change.
Right. Well, that's a good one. And I think share your thought, share your opinion. I've always been there when it comes to change. When we implement any software for any company, we always have a change manager. You know what I'm talking about? Because if you don't do that, you can do the best implementation and the people will tell you, it's not working. It's not working because they just don't want to do it. They just don't want to use the system. So you have to really change their mind for you to tell them that this system is not to take over your job. It's just to enhance what you're doing. So you have to make them understand that. Yeah. And I think your magic wand, it's really very important. But thank you so much for sharing that. I want to ask you, I see you very, active on LinkedIn and you have about 11,000 followers. I just want you to walk us through your current content approach on social media. How do you decide what you post? How often do you post? What do you share? What's the importance of what you share? Just walk us through your strategy and what is working for you.
The strategy is really more of an outflowing of my mind. I try to post 3 times a week with a meaningful idea, tip, skill, whatsoever, but something that's meaningful, that's actionable. It's not a platitude. There are far too many people out there posting on LinkedIn. They say, discovery is good. It's like, okay, great. The strategy is basically that 3 times a week, something that's meaningful, that's noteworthy, that people can consume and they can actually take action of or incorporate in their own processes and their skills.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Let's dive into the meat topic of today. Transforming sales motion through discovery, demo, and buyer enablement. You've literally written the books on this. 3 editions of Great Demo and Doing Discovery. In your view, what's fundamentally broken in how most B2B software companies approach their sales motion today?
The single most broken piece of the entire process is doing discovery. I cannot tell you how many times I have listened to call recordings that are identified as a discovery call, and the actual amount of discovery is often on the order of 7 or 8 minutes.
Wow.
Visualize this. 30-minute call starts off. The first 3 minutes are establishing rapport, which means that a salesperson is scanning the Zoom background and says, oh, looks like you like black and white photography. Okay, blah, blah, blah. The next few minutes are often where actual discovery takes place, where the prospect confirms that they have the pain that the vendor would like to hear. And then there's a little bit of discussion, most typically, of the environment and tech stack. And after that, what typically happens in these faux discovery calls? Any suggestion, any idea? What happens next?
They want to sell.
That's right. Well, they want to sell. So the next thing that very frequently takes place is the vendor moves swiftly from doing discovery to, let me tell you all about my company, my product. And they go into a corporate overview presentation of a handful of slides and then they go into a product overview presentation if they have one, of a handful of slides, and if there's still a little time, they start into a what I call a stunningly awful harbor tour demo. So elapsed time of discovery, 7 or 8 minutes, totally insufficient. And the natural result of that are going to be unstructured, painful demos because the vendor at this point has an insufficient understanding of the prospect situation. Wow. So the area of greatest need, in my opinion, is actually doing discovery, going way beyond simply hearing a prospect admitting pain. In the Doing Discovery book, I identify, 7 levels of discovery skills. And level 1 is simply uncovering statements of pain. Level 2 is exploring that pain more deeply. Level 3 investigates the impacts of that pain. Level 4 investigates and quantifies value. And it goes down or up from there. You ask people to honestly assess where they are. Most salespeople will rank themselves much higher than their sales managers rank.
Right.
Their sales managers say, oh, they're probably operating at level 1 to 2 to maybe 3. Most salespeople would say they're operating at levels 3 or 4, or in some cases, they're even brave enough to say 5. But the stunning reality is most salespeople, when you actually analyze the calls, they're operating at about level 1 or 2. And that means there's an enormous room for improvement, absolutely enormous.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. Before I ask you the next question, just a clarification. I know you deal with software demo and all the likes. Does your methodology works for any sales team, or it's just for demo software technology only?
So I know from experience that both methodologies actually apply much more broadly than to just pure software. However, I would say that it applies to B2B, not B2C.
Right.
It's a totally different beast. And to a certain degree, the more complex the offerings, the more these methodologies apply. So, if you've got a simple product-led offering, even in software, these methodologies may not apply because the product, quote unquote, sells itself. But if you have something that's moving towards ERP or CRM or any other 3-letter acronym of software, then this is where they apply most readily. Medical devices, anything that has software in it applies directly. In many cases, the hardware box, for example, is just a bunch of knobs and dials. But it's the software that's actually both running the instrumentation and harvesting the data, harvesting the results. Once again, that is a perfect, great demo situation. But to answer your question more readily, pretty much anytime you've got a complex offering, could be services. They've been applied quite well in services. That's really the answer to that question.
Okay, thank you so much for clarifying that. I mean, it's very important we get that clarity so that people could know if your methodology could work for their offering or not. All right. You've been able to explain probably in 2 occasions now since we've been talking about some of the ways bad demos have been done. My next question is, can you walk us through what a good demo looks like, especially using your framework?
Absolutely. So let's say that you're my prospect. Right. And you and I invested a good hour in doing a discovery conversation yesterday.
Okay. All right.
And we agreed that today I would come back and show you a demo based on what we talked about. I would start the demo by sharing a PowerPoint slide or a Google slide that says at the top, what we heard from you or what I heard from you. And I would list the key elements of discovery information that I heard. So you shared as the head of sales that you're concerned about missing your quarterly and annual numbers. I believe what you said is holding you back is blah, 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 blah. You told me you were looking for the following kinds of capabilities. You shared with me that you need to generate 2 million more by the end of the year than what you're tracking on now. And I believe what you told me is you need to have a solution in place by the end of March so that you can really march down the next 3 quarters afterwards. I would then say, is my understanding all correct? And
Yeah,
you'd say,
that's true.
has anything changed since we spoke yesterday afternoon?
Not at all.
And you'd say, nope. Okay. All right. Let's get out of sort of the role play mode. What I just did was start the demo with information is all about you. It's all about you, the prospect, which has the impact of drawing you into the whole process. You're already engaged because it's all about you. The next thing I do is I put up what I call an illustration. I put up a single screen or screenshot. In this example, if it was a CRM system for you, I'd put up an example of the current forecast. Here's the current forecast laid out so you can see exactly where are the high-value deals, where are the deals that are less secure, how people are doing against their individual quotas. I would lay out a dashboard that answers the questions that I have, or you as a CRO have, about where's my forecast. I would review that. I would describe how it's helping to solve the problems you'd articulated. I'd describe the fact that this may help you generate that incremental $2 million in revenue. And then I'd ask, what do you think? How does this resonate?
Yeah, looks good. That's good. I want to know more.
You want to know more? Okay. And from there, we could go one of two ways if I had several of these illustrations. But I might say then, would you like to see what it takes to actually for you to generate this, to bring it up in the software?
Okay.
And I'd say, great, let's go in and do it. And I would go to start the offering, click, and there's that dashboard. And then I would summarize and say, so what you just saw is in 2 clicks of the mouse, how you can bring up this dashboard anywhere from any of the devices you might wish. That's all it takes for you to get that information right at your little fingertips. Now, moving out of, if you will, this role play discussion. So what I did, I've done 3 pieces so far of a great demo methodology. I shared your situation, so the situation slide review.
Solution.
I shared an image of the solution, and then I showed you the outcome, and then I showed you how easy it is for you to get that yourself. And from there, we enter the beautiful world of peeling back the layers. So I might say, so where would you like to take the demo from here? And you'd say, you know what, I'd like to drill into one of those individual opportunities and see what's going on. Terrific, let's do that. Click. So we're now looking at an opportunity. What do you see here that catches your interest? Oh, well, it looks like there's not a whole lot of discovery information. It doesn't look like there's an agreement on a mutual action plan, for example. Perfect. Now you know you need to go and contact that rep, help that person understand they need to have a mutual, action plan. They need to go back and probably ask some additional discovery questions, gather some more information. That'll help you hopefully rescue that particular opportunity. So what we just showed you then is how easy it is for you to inspect any particular opportunity and take action. Where would you like to take things from here? So this is known as peeling back the layers. It's designed to really be very conversational. You ask a question, you offer a comment, I respond, and we go back and forth until you're satisfied, baby.
Right. But how many minutes does this take in typically?
Oh, here's an interesting, it takes exactly as many minutes as needed to satisfy your prospect. And here's an interesting rubric. You may be done with your demo like this for an executive in 10 minutes, maybe even less. That may be all they need to see. Saw the summary of their situation. They saw the 3 reports and dashboards they're looking for. And I cannot tell you how many times I've had executives say, hey guys, I'm good. I've seen what I need to see. I'm going to go on. They look at their watch. They say, I'm going to go on to another meeting. You guys can stay here and torture the vendors as long as you rock. So the higher you go, the less you may need to show. Middle managers, they want to see their dashboards, they want to see their reports, but they also need to now to know where to take action, where to detail tasks for their team members, for example. Where are the exceptions? Where are the opportunities? Where are the outliers that are we should be investigating? So a demo for a middle manager may be a little bit longer. Now, the end users, so let's talk about it. For a salesperson now that has to use the CRM system, they may want to see all the painful day-to-day stuff. Okay, yeah, show me how I do need to enter a new record. How do I clone that record and add notes? How do I input my discovery notes? Because I'm going to have to use this system. So what we're really talking about here is not the demo, but 3 individual demos for 3 different job titles who have 3 different sets of needs and wants. Does that resonate?
Yeah. They just want to know the area, the system will help them, and they want to be sure that yes, it could actually do the job. All right.
Exactly. Want to hear a mini horror story? I can tell you two ones. These are big fun. So I cannot tell you how many times I will hear traditional demos start off by talking about here's how you set up and configure the system. So I was watching for one of my customers. I was watching a demo recording. It was an hour and a half, 90 minutes. The first 40 minutes of that demo was the vendor presenting how to set up and configure the system. And then the woman who was presenting the demo in this, she says, and I quote, she says, but you won't have to do any of this because we do it all during implementation. So I called her. Yeah, I called. So 40 minutes of the hour and a half was showing stuff that the customer would never, ever have to do, never needed to see. I called her up. Immediately after. I said, but why? And she said, we've been told by senior management that we need to present this because it's one of our key differentiators. And I sort of rolled my eyes quietly and said, well, you're differentiating, but not in a good way.
Yeah.
So these are the kinds of traps. One of the phrases I love to offer is we are victims of momentum. We are victims of momentum. We, particularly as vendor organizations, we do the same thing the same way over and over and over unless we're given a shove in a new direction. And that was my role, was to give them a shove in a new direction and to a certain degree to grease that new pathway to make it easier to go down.
All right.
So how's that for a order story?
That's fantastic. But I'm just going to ask this question. Probably you might have answered it a little bit, but it's very good for me to do it. I love a story that you share about the CEO sliding his credit card across the table, then slowly taking it back when you over-demonstrated. That's a very fascinating one. But beyond the painful lesson of stop selling when, they are ready to buy, what are some of the top 3 mistakes, just 3, that you see today that people that sell or pre-sale are actually making repeatedly?
So the top mistake, and this is actually a great way to come back to this topic, is following the vendor's sales process as opposed to the prospect's buying process.
Right.
So this is something that the concept of buyer enablement is a concept that only began to appear about 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. And it's kind of just been appearing. And the fundamental idea is very, very simple. Instead of pursuing sales process stages and working to try to force your prospect to conform to your sales process stages. Sales enablement is all about seeking to understand the method and the process that your prospect needs to follow and wants to follow and mapping to that. But it's even deeper than that. Because in buyer enablement, what you're really trying to do is both understand the process and then anticipate your buyer's needs and desires. So to give you a small example, today, that's going to have to work, any vendor that's going to have to be handling or working with a prospect's data or contacts is going to have to complete a data privacy and security audit, right? So if you know as a vendor, if you know that you're going to have to do that, and you're dealing with a prospect that may not really realize that, it's incumbent upon you to tell the prospects early on, hey, dear prospect, you know what? We're probably going to have to execute with your IT folks a security and data privacy audit or fill out the survey. Why don't we get started on that now so that, because we know that's going to take a few weeks to complete, so it doesn't end up impacting the schedule that you said you need to meet. So that's a simple example. Another one that I still do, particularly with buyers who are inexperienced, I say, so, in order for you to share some of these Zoom calls with me, these recordings, why don't we execute a mutual NDA? And my prospect context says, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. Yeah, that's right. I'll get started on that right away. So those are tangible, simple elements of buyer enablement. But fundamentally, it's a shift from here's our sales process. We need to qualify. We need to do this. We do this. We do this. We do this. To mapping to your prospect. And I'll give you one additional example.
Right.
So I have a long-standing customer who has bought from my organizations now at least 4 times over. So I don't need to sell.
True.
right? What I need to do each time we have re-engaged, he's been at a different company where he's brought in our services. Each time, what I've needed to do is a discovery that's focused on how this organization is different from his previous ones. What are their what's their culture like? What's their adoption like? What are their current practices and so forth. But I don't need to sell them. I just need to map to how this new organization needs to bring in our services. Does that resonate? So I'm dealing, yeah. I mean, it's like, so in my mind, part of buyer enablement is also champion enablement.
Right.
So in some cases, in the case that I just referenced, you've got a champion who's very experienced, complex offerings. You still need to do the right amount of discovery, but I don't need to convince them. I just need to execute my role and have him basically sponsor me to the people on his team that he needs to have me talk with, do discovery with, watch some demos, watch some discovery calls, and so forth. Conversely, you might be working with a champion it is his first time ever buying something complex. In which case you need to do two things. You need to help him understand his own buying process and then map to it.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I wanted to ask you, I know you mentioned that you were making a lot of money at one stage, a lot of clients coming in, you are referring them back to some other people. So currently now, where are you? Are you still in the mode of getting more clients to yourself, or you just stay where you are? And because I don't know what your plan is, especially for the next 12 months, because I want to also know if we're willing to get more clients, and at the end of the day, do you willing to train more people? If there are people who are willing to do this, just give a picture of what your plans are for the next 12 months.
So I am now focusing on generating content, continuing to refine the ideas, ideating new processes, new things, and communicating those out. The partner organization is now doing what I was doing 5 years ago. They're amplifying, they're finding. So yes, there's a need for more people to serve as partners and sell and deliver great demos, sell and deliver doing discovery. However, those are being trained and brought aboard by my current partners. So that's how the amplification process is working. My job now is generating content, refining things, coming up with new ideas. Actually, I just did this morning. So I'll give you an example. So I wrote this book, Suspending Disbelief. You read the credit card story in this. That's where that story is. As in a way to say, everybody's talking about storytelling, but there's a lot of confusion about storytelling. So you know what? I'm just going to tell some stories and try to use those as both a method of sharing a lot of learnings and entertaining at the same time. If you type the prompt, well, let me ask you this. What's a good story? What's the definition of a good story?
It depends. So again, what is the motive? Do you want to make people laugh? If you have an element that make people laugh,
let's do it. Let me do it. What's a good story? What's the definition of a good story in terms of sales process?
it must be solving a problem.
Okay.
So your story must run
Is that a good story?
Yeah, it must run around that at the end of the day, they could see that it solved the problem. Otherwise, then
okay. What's the difference? What's the difference between a feature statement, an advantage statement, benefit statement, an analogy, and a story?
That's quite a lot.
Would you like a definition or two? Okay, so the feature statement is simply describing the feature and what it does. So our biframmulator capability enables you to search large files of data. Boring, not a story. Okay, an advantage statement presumes an advantage. Our biframmulator capability enables you to search large piles of data, which we believe will help you get the results you need faster than your current methods. Okay, that's an advantage statement. The benefit statement incorporates discovery information. So it sounds a lot like an advantage statement, goes a little bit different. Our biframmulator capability should help you reduce the time it takes you to find and leverage the information you need by about a factor of 10 based on what you told us in discovery. Okay, so you're closing the loop, but still not a story. Still not a story. Okay. An analogy is a way of anchoring or attaching a new concept to concepts that are already in somebody's mind. So our biframulator capability is very much like proverbial finding a needle in a haystack. It enables you to find data in ways that manually could never have been done. This is a great example for AI. And surface it so that you can use it in ways you've never been able to do before. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. Okay, that's an analogy. Analogies are stickier than any of the feature, advantage, or benefit statements. But a story is, let me share with you, what you described to me so far, dear prospect, is very much like a customer we had early on, that they had an enormous pile of data. They were approaching a deadline. They had been working their way through it using Excel and very, very simple automated mechanisms, but it wasn't getting them there. They were dying. They knew they had the answers in the data, but they had been unable to tease it out. Well, at the 11th hour, they bumped into an AI tool that very simply allowed them to build up a model based on a couple of nice training sets. They then put this enormous pile of, go with me on this enormous pile of data through it. And they were surprised to find not just the answers that they had expected to be in the data, but they found some outliers that represented entirely new dimensions that they were able to pursue. As a result of this, they found they were able to reduce the time it took and the manpower it took to find those answers by literally a factor of 10, and it enabled $7 million in incremental revenue. There you go.
Oh, that's huge.
Now, by the way, I just made that up. I mean, I just totally fabricated that story. But that's a story. A good story has certain key storytelling elements in it. It's got to be relatable. It's got to sound like a real experience. It's got to have a twist or an element of surprise. That's one of the key differentiators that makes a good story as opposed to simply a feature statement or a benefit statement or something like that. Does that resonate?
I got it. Exactly what you're saying. And when you have a good story, when you're doing a demo, it's easy for you to captivate whoever you're talking to. And I think that's the whole objective, right?
And good stories have another interesting attribute. They get retold.
Yeah, true.
They get to retold. Would you like an example?
True, yeah, go for it.
I will give you the first portion and you can finish it. Slow and steady.
Win the race.
There you go. Now, what story is that and how old is it?
I know,
What
it's
story?
been a long time. I can't remember, but I know. Maybe tortoise or something.
It's the tortoise. Yeah, the tortoise and the hare. The tortoise and the hare. The turtle and the turtle and the rabbit. Now, here's an interesting question. How old is that story?
Many years, I can't remember. Probably before I was born.
It's a little bit before you were born. 1,600 years ago. It's one of Aesop's fables. Aesop lived 600 BCE.
Wow.
And here's the kicker. The idea behind that story, the moral is, my son or daughter, if you just persevere and work hard, will do well. Slowly, steady wins the race. Boring. If you have children? Yeah, any chance?
Dude,
How old are they? Teenagers. Okay, perfect. So if you say, son or daughter, if you just work hard and persevere, you're going to do well. Their reaction is going to be whatever.
Yeah.
However, if you embed that boring idea inside a story that has these key storytelling elements, well, this story has lived for 2,600 years, and they get retold over and over and over. And if you note in the story of the rabbit and hare, there's a little twist. There's a surprise. That rabbit should win, but it went to sleep.
Wow. Interesting. Thank you so much for that. That's one question I want to ask you, maybe in 60 seconds or less, if possible, is, I know you say you're doing something different currently. Your real model, you already, in one way, hand it over to other group of people doing it, and they're doing it well. Now, if you want to go on sabbatical today, let's say 6 months, do you think your company could continue running without you?
Without question. Not a problem at all.
Wow, fantastic. That's good because you already tell us why.
Oh, because I'll successfully transition everything I was doing with respect to marketing, selling, delivering, and following up from the training business, from Great Demo and doing discovery, over to the partners. The one thing I have not transitioned, and probably will never completely transition because one cannot take one's mind, is generating new ideas. That's my job.
Okay.
Generating new ideas.
That's good. Thank you so much. Now, as we wrap up, if you're sitting in front of somebody like me or other people, maybe people that are also doing sales for complex, offers, software, what one piece of advice will you be giving them?
Beware of the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Okay.
Are you familiar with that?
I've read it, I can't remember, but tell me more.
Dunning-Kruger effect is what we suffer as practitioners somewhere after about 5 years in any particular discipline, which is when we believe we are at the top of our game. We believe we know everything about the topic. We won't say it that way, but we're like, I'm really skilled at this, and I can go in and give this demo over and over. I can give this demo in my sleep. Dunning-Kruger said, when you reach that point, you're actually at the peak of something called Mount Stupid. And when you realize it, then you plunge into what's known as the Valley of Despair, where you realize that, oh my God, there's so much I don't know. And then things improve from there on up. So the cautionary statement, and I went through this, I've gone through this several times, is to recognize and cautiously test to see if you are suffering the Dunning-Kruger effect.
All right, that's a good piece of advice. And I believe our audience will take heed to it. Now, last thing is, if people wants to get in touch with you, they like this methodology and they think, wow, where have I been? And I didn't know about this and I want to run it.
Yeah.
How can they get in touch with you?
Most easily, go to greatdemo.com. That's the easiest way to find not only access to myself, but an enormous amount of content on our resources pages of webinars, articles, blog posts like the one you just referenced about the credit card story. And if you want to reach out to me directly, and I'd love to hear from you, it's Cohan at greatdemo.com. And of course, the books are all available on Amazon: Suspending Disbelief, Great Demo 3rd Edition, and Doing Discovery.
All right. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing all this incredible insight from decades in the trenches of software sales and pre-sales. Your methodologies have transformed countless sales organizations, and I have no doubt our listeners will find tremendous value in this conversation. I must say, Peter, thank you so much for coming through. I think we can continue this conversation for the next 1 hour, but I have to also respect your time. Maybe we bring you back another time, but thank you so much for sharing with us.
I would be delighted, and it's truly been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you.
You didn't quit your day job to become a full-time admin assistant. The Intelligence Forge podcast is sponsored by Permasize AI Forge. At Permasize AI Forge, we know you didn't start your business to spend 60 hours a week on paperwork, chasing leads, and managing endless admin tasks. You started it to build something meaningful and serve your clients. But right now, you're trapped in the day-to-day grind instead of growing your business. What if I told you our clients are reclaiming 15, 20 hours per week, increasing their revenue by 30 to 50% within 6, 12 months, and finally getting their lives back? We don't just automate random tasks. We build custom AI systems that eliminate the bottlenecks choking your growth, from leads generation to lead, nurturing and management to project management to client follow-ups. Stop paying for an expensive, frustrating manual system. It's time to upgrade to strategic automation. Visit PermasizeAIForge.com and book your free business transformation strategy call today. Discover exactly how much time and money you're losing to manual processes and how to get both back. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Intelligence Forge, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode packed with game-changing insights. Your future automated business is waiting.